Hi there, accountants. I hope all is well, and I pray that as you are viewing this video, that you are in the best of health and spirit. This video is going to cover Chapter 1, an introduction to QuickBooks Online, using the sample company from QuickBooks Online for Accountant 2026 ninth edition. So upon completion of this chapter, the student should be able to do the following. Open the sample company provided by Intuit. This essentially just allows you to explore QuickBooks Online before you actually start to use it. You'll get to access customer, vendor, and employee information. So customers are basically those that are buying products and services from the company. Vendors are essentially those that are doing the same, but providing services and products to the company, right? So that's the difference. Customers, the company, let's just say it's where we're soon going to look at Craig's Design and Landscape. So a customer would be those that Craig's Landscape provides services to, and vendors are essentially companies that provide services to the company Craig's Landscape. Then we also have employee information. That's essentially those that work for the company. We will explore banking transactions. We'll explore sales and expense transactions. So sales basically is the revenue for the company. And we know that in business, you ultimately will not make money unless you spend money. So those are our expenses. We'll explore the chart of accounts, which is basically a listing of all of the different accounts for the company. So an example that I always use, I love pizza. When I used to work in a particular location, I'm from New York City, and downtown in Manhattan, they had a place called Two Bros Pizza. This company, they were cash only, right? So I couldn't go there. There were times where, fell on hard times, didn't have any money, right? I couldn't go in there and say, hey, can I buy this on account? If you give me 2 slices of pizza today, I'll bring you $2. They used to sell it for $1. Definitely not now. But I'll say, hey, I'll give you $2 or $2.50, whatever the amount is, in 2 weeks when I get paid. Not happening. So for a company like Two Bros, they will not have accounts receivable in their chart of accounts. Why? They don't extend services, they don't extend their product, which is pizza, on account. So chart of accounts, they are always going to be tailored to the specific needs of a company. If Two Bros does not offer delivery, they don't have a truck, then there's not going to be a truck in their chart of accounts. So chart of accounts, they're always listed and tailored to the specific company. We'll explore lists, we'll access reports, and we'll use the gear icon to view the company's settings. So we're going to start off with an overview. So Intuit, they provide a sample company online to provide new users a test drive of QuickBooks Online product. Much like sometimes you go to the store. I remember taking my son out for ice cream once, and the flavor looked good, but I was like, I don't know if this is going to taste good or not. And I tried it, and I actually didn't like it. So I was glad because the ice cream was pretty expensive. And I tried another flavor, and I liked that one better. So same thing. You are getting a test drive of QuickBooks Online. You're going to open a sample company, and we'll explore various features of QuickBooks Online. And in this chapter, we'll be viewing the sample company, looking at customers, vendors, employee information. We'll also be viewing banking, sales, and expense transactions, and we'll be looking at the chart of accounts, lists, reports, and company settings. We're not going to be making any changes. We're not going to add customers, invoices, checks, and so on. This is going to happen in future chapters. The author has no control over the dates used by Intuit, and the dates may change depending on when we're accessing the file online. So the dates and the figures supplied by the text, or in the text rather, it may not be the dates on our screen. So just keep that in mind. Some of the dates, they might be a little different. At the end of the day, the fundamentals, what we are learning, still are the same. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to start with the sample company. So we can use this sample company again to explore QuickBooks Online as often as you like, as much as you want. No matter what you do to modify the sample company, it is not going to save. So keep that in mind. So don't be afraid to explore thinking, oh, I'm going to mess up the file. It's just not going to happen. So when you leave and later return, it's going to look the same as it did initially. Every time you open a sample company, it's going to retrieve your current system date, the actual date that you're working on it on the computer, and it's going to place that date under the company name on the home page. So you're going to open your internet browser. Obviously, when it's already open, you can either type it in or you can just click on the text box. I'm going to click on the text box, just make life a little easier for me. It might ask you, are you a robot? Sometimes that comes up. All right, didn't come up in that case, but just in case it does. All right, this is a really cool trick that I learned from one of my students. I'm gonna shout him out, Ashford Nichols. Before, I used to be struggling to get the two screens to align, and he taught me this really amazing tool. If you're using Windows and you want to, toggle between the screens using Window left key, right key. So I'll show you guys again really quickly because he saw me struggling and decided to help me. So I just pressed Windows left key and then Windows right key, it automatically does it. So I want to give Ashford a special shout out. I appreciate you. All right, so we have the company open. So here we see again the transaction dates, they might differ. Just keep that in mind. But it looks pretty much the same for the most part. Right here, we are going to open. Sometimes, in the profession, when there's 3 lines, we say it's like a hamburger, whatever. So we open this and then we can also close it. We can collapse it. So we can expand it and then we can close it. So here we or collapse it rather. So we expand it. It looks, just a little bit different, but looks the same for the most part. So we have new, we have bookmarks, we have dashboards, transactions, right? We see the difference here is that between dashboards and transactions, we have tasks, right? So there's a little bit of a nuance, but we'll carry on nonetheless. So it's asking us to click on plus new icon. So we click on new. And here we see we have 4 columns. We have customers, we have vendors, we have team, and we have other. And again, some things are a little different, but nonetheless, everything that we need, I'll walk you through, hence the purposes of these videos. So this just essentially shows us, what we can see. We have the customers, again, those that the company, Craig's Landscape, provides services to. Vendors, those that provide services and products to Craig's Design Landscape. We have our team, our employees, and our contractors, and then anything else we need to do, you can find in other. So move on to the next page. We're going to look at our customers, vendors, and employees. So QuickBooks Online provides easy access to customer information using the navigation bar. So in this section, we're going to open the customer section in a new tab and drill down to a specific customer and specific transactions related to that customer. So this is the navigation bar, the one that I just collapsed and that I now expand. This is our navigation bar. So to access the customer information, we do the following. We go to sales. And then here with sales, we see that there's a list. We have overview, all sales, etc. We go to customers, click on that. And then if the navigation menu doesn't appear, you can click on the show navigation icon located next to the word sample company, right? So if you don't see it, you can actually even type it in. Show navigation, all right? And then this will ultimately, help you to open it up. All right, so there's multiple ways to do things. And then this essentially is the icon as well. Just clicking it, closing it, pretty much. All right. So as we scroll down, we already are in the customer section. We see Amy's Birds. We see Bill's Win Surf Shop. So it's asking us to click on Amy's Bird Sanctuary. We click on it. And then it's going to show us the detailed transactions. Right now, she owes us $239. So the $239 overdue balance noted at the top of the window correlates to invoice 1021. So we see there's a plethora of invoices here. I'm going to make it a little smaller. All right, so we see there's a bunch of invoices. The ones that were fully paid, or the invoices rather that were fully paid, it's closed. So I was mentioning a little earlier about accounts receivable. So one key thing to note is that if a customer pays you right away in QuickBooks Online, you're going to use the sales receipt. If you provide a service or a product to a customer and they do not pay you right away, that is when you use an invoice. All right, so you want to be able to differentiate between the different things, the different terminology that's used in QuickBooks Online. Also kind of ties into what you learn in your basic accounting course, but accounting, or QuickBooks Online rather, kind of streamlines the process. So you want to understand the mechanics of what's happening behind the scenes. So we see invoice 1021 was not paid in full. It was partially paid. She owes $239. So we see it. And again, just this verbiage just saying the dates are a little different, doesn't matter. So QuickBooks Online provides easy access to vendor information using the navigation bar. So this just kind of wanted us to show us rather how we get to customers. So we go to sales, then we go to customers. If you want to see our invoices, we want to see estimates, right, of how much a project is going to cost, sales orders, deposits, products and services, all of these things we can find in sales. So now the next step, it asks us to access vendor information. So we have the navigation bar already open. We go to expenses and we go to vendors. We click on this. And then we see here, we have a few vendors. All right, so it's asking us to click on the Broshnahan Insurance Agency. So we click on that. And then it opens up and it shows that, hey, well, now we owe them, right? We owe them $241.23. So it's asking us to click on that amount. I'm actually going to collapse this. So it's asking us to click on the 241.23. So we have a bill from this company. We owe them $241.23 for insurance, right? So we look at this and it's basically letting us know that we owe them. So the $241.23 is an overdue balance. Again, it's noted at the top of the window. So we can just close that out. Now it's asking us to access the employee information. So we already closed it out. Now we can click on this, click on payroll, and go to employees. All right, so as of right now, it's telling us it can't find that page. Let's see. I'm going to refresh it. All right, so it's not allowing us to see it. Let's see. I'll try contractors and see if that'll get us there. All right, so it's not allowing us to see it for whatever reason. All right, well, we'll utilize textbook in such case. So figure 1.9, this is essentially what it is going to look like. When we get to, I believe it's like chapter 8 or 9, we are going to deal with payroll. I know at QuickBooks Online, you need a subscription. So we basically do the workaround where we manually add the employee. We don't actually run the payroll through QuickBooks. So we're going to add them and pay them through journal entries. So that way you guys still kind of understand the mechanics of what's being done behind the scene. But QuickBooks does have a payroll service. And this is what it should essentially look like. And then you can, make it a little bigger. So this is basically what it would look like. I'm just going to, so here we see the setup is essentially still the same. Employees, contractors, workers, comp. It's just giving us an error for whatever reason. But hopefully by the time you, look at this lecture, it's going to be working. But that's what it would look like ultimately. And then when you click on John Johnson, then in such case, it will just show you his information. So for all of your employees, they'll have a profile and some notes. It'll let you know if they're active or inactive, their phone number, birthday, preferred name, email, all of their basic information ultimately is going to be there. So we're basically good to go. We looked at customers, we looked at vendors, we looked at employees, payroll, or we looked at it from the book, since it was a challenge with the sample company. Nonetheless, again, this is just showing you how to navigate it. So it's telling you to sign out, but we're not going to do that because, again, we're learning how to navigate it all. So there's no need to sign out. So we're going to move on banking transactions. So QuickBooks Online, they have an online banking feature that lets you automatically connect to your bank and download banking related transactions. Depending on the bank you have, they cover a plethora of banks, or a plethora of banks are integrated with QuickBooks Online. Some credit unions are not, and unfortunately you have to download the CSV file and then manually import it. But for the most part, majority, especially if the well-known banks, you'll be able to automatically connect it. So this application automatically matches the banking transaction with a previously recorded QuickBooks Online transaction. QBO calls this recognizing. And this feature is going to be briefly reviewed because, again, the text is academically based and no real bank account is linked in this sample. Hence, no real bank account is going to be linked to your student company. All right, so it says open the browser. We already have it open. We're already in the test drive because we didn't close it. So we go to transactions in our navigation bar. We click on bank transactions. And then here we see, all right, if you want to do an overview, feel free. All right, we have these accounts. So I'll collapse this so we can see. Maybe make this a little smaller. All right, so we see we have 3 accounts. We have a checking account, savings account, and a MasterCard. All right, so what I'll do is actually make this a little smaller. Let's see if that helps. All right, so now we can see it a little better. All right, so it looks the same. We have 25 accounts. Right now, we see that there's a difference. The bank balance is saying is negative $3,621.93. And in QuickBooks, it says $1,201. The math is not mathing. Something's wrong. So obviously, that is why we use the reconciliation process, right? So we have our records, which is essentially QuickBooks, and then we have the bank's records, which is the bank balance. So we want to make sure that those things always tie. So we use this example because it's simple, quick, right? Right now we see the bank balance shows 200, and in QuickBooks it shows 800, right? So ultimately we see why it doesn't tie, right? We see that there's this uncategorized income of $200. So now what we're probably going to need to do is to reconcile it, to figure out, hey, what are we missing, right? Which balance is correct ultimately. So typically the bank balance is generally the most accurate, but again, sometimes the bank could get things wrong. So always want to double check those two. So we scroll down to the checking account and wants us to look at the checking account to view some of the transactions. So we have Books by Bessie, we have a rental, we have Pam Says, Hicks Hardware, and things of that nature. Then it also wants us to scroll back up to the checking page and go to the bank register. So we click here, go to the bank register. And on the right to view the traditional checking account. So there have been some changes to QuickBooks Online. So some of the interface might look just a little different, but still the same thing nonetheless, right? So in the event that you are using the newer version of QuickBooks, you can just select view the traditional checking account register. All right. You can close any messages that appear, and sometimes you have to enlarge the view, but it remains the same thing, right? There was a credit card, MasterCard, you paid $900. So even though the interface might look a little different, still the same thing ultimately. All right, so bank deposits that have not been recorded in QuickBooks Online are not recognized, and they're temporarily classified as uncategorized income. Bank charges that have not been recorded in QuickBooks Online and not recognized, they're classified as uncategorized expenses. So when you use uncategorized income, that's generally when you need to speak with a client and you need to confirm, hey, how should this be categorized, right? Give us some insight, because sometimes there's some deposits that comes in and maybe it's the owner or owners making an investment. It's not revenue, or maybe it's a liability. It's a loan. They need to track it. So typically when you don't know right away, put it in uncategorized income. The same thing for uncategorized expenses. Let's say there's a flight, and you want to ensure, is this a business expense or is it personal? It's treated differently. If it's a business expense, then it affects the net income. If it is a personal expense, then it is going to affect shareholders' equity, right? That is very important. If it's a payment for a loan, in such case, only the interest expense portion is going to affect the profit and loss. The amount that is applied to the principal, that affects the balance sheet. So you want to ask the client the right questions. So the bank register that we saw in figure 1.13, this one here, it's similar to the general ledger account concept seen in traditional accounting without the debits and credits. The balance is going to be shown after every increase or decrease in the account. And in a bank account, increases are deposits and decreases are payments, obviously. Registers exits for all assets, for liabilities and equity accounts, and it's a great way to identify and correct errors if they occur. So as we move on and work in other chapters, again, as I mentioned in the first video, and I'm going to stress all throughout these chapters, understanding the fundamentals of accounting basics is of the utmost important, because again, QuickBooks Online, it's a great program, amazing. It streamlines accounting, but the key thing is garbage goes into the program, garbage is going to come out. So if you do not understand the mechanics of what's happening behind the scenes, you're going to find yourself struggling. But if you understand the basics, you know what to do, and more importantly, you'll know how to fix certain errors. So now we're going to move on to sales and expense transactions. So the next two choices in the navigation bar are sales and expense. We had some experience with that already when we looked at our customers and our vendors. So the sales transaction section is going to provide a listing of the recent sale invoices and payments. Some are closed and others are open, meaning some of the customers paid us, some of them didn't. Thus, the action item of receiving payment is listed for all open invoices. And this screen also highlights any unbilled activity, open balances, overdue balances, and invoices that have been paid within the last 30 days across the top. So it's going to ask us to go to sales. We click on all sales. And we see here we have $750 of unbilled income. Customers owe us $1,500. There's $5,300 of open invoices and credits, and we recently received $3,100. So we see there are a bit of differences between the numbers, but nonetheless, same thing, right? Same concept. And again, as mentioned earlier, an invoice is basically that we provided a service to a customer and they did not pay us right away. So we have an accounts receivable. So it's asking us to click on invoice 1036. We click on it, and this reveals the activity of the invoice. Let's see. All right, here we go. Let's just click edit invoice so we can see it. So it's going to open invoice 1036. There's a balance due of $477.50 for Freeman Sporting Goods. All right, so we basically cancel it. It just shows us all of the detail. There was some landscaping, some designing, and things of that nature. All right, and the great thing about QuickBooks Online, if you actually use this or your client uses this, then they can ask for payment right through QuickBooks. So the expense transactions is going to provide a listing of the recent credit card charges, bills, expenses, purchase orders, checks, bills, payments, as well as cash payments. You can decide to drill down to view a particular credit card transaction. So we clicked on expenses. I went to the navigation bar, expenses, clicked on that. And now it's asking us to go to Pam Seats. So we see Pam Seats. Number 76, expense number 76. We click on it for $75. She provided us with legal and professional counsel. So therefore, we have this expense for $75. We owe Pam Seats we paid rather Pam Seats $75. So as I mentioned, with the difference between the sales receipt and the invoice, similar thing, but now we owe someone. So ultimately, when we have a bill, that means that we received a product or a service and we did not pay for it right away. So therefore, we have a bill. When we pay for something right away, then we record it as an expense. So I'll just open up that expense again so we can see. All right. So with the expense, we see here that the payment account was the checking account. It already came out. We paid it. But with a bill, however, we owe the money. Let me see if they have any bills in here. All right, so we owe the money. So we have PG&E. Let's just say that it's the cable company or whatever it is. We owe them $86.44. So that is the difference between a bill and an expense. A bill is an IOU. We owe the company. With an expense, we pay it right away. All right, so now we move on to settings. The settings window is also known as the gear window. It's accessed by clicking the gear icon located in the upper right portion of QuickBooks Online. This is where we can modify the company's settings, products, services, and budgets, as well as reconcile the bank accounts. So in order to view the settings window and examine the company's settings, it's asking us to click on the gear icon. So with the gear icon, it's this one that looks like a nut or a bolt. I think nut, whatever. It looks like, I think it looks like a nut or a bolt. I'm not sure, but here it is right here, right? All right, so everybody sees perfect. So we click on this. These are the settings. All right, it shows us our company. Again, we have a few columns. We have your company, we have lists, we have tools, and then we have profile. So if we click on account and settings, this allows us to view the company name, the type, the address, and then we see at the left pane, it also lists usage, sales, expenses, time in advance. So there are some settings that can be updated and changed in alignment with what the company wants. All right. So here we see the name of the company. We see the email. For those of you that like QuickBooks or you say, hey, this is a really amazing software, I would strongly suggest that each of you earn the certification. The QuickBooks Online, they have a first level, a basic level QuickBooks Online, and then they have an advanced. They also have one for payroll. So I would strongly suggest, because QuickBooks Online is used within the profession, you earn your certification. And what you're learning now, you can apply it for your customers, right? So definitely a great software. So we click that out, close it. But again, any changes that you need to make, you can basically just update them from here. You want to manage users. You want your form to look a specific way. There's different styles. You can update your chart of accounts, payroll settings. You can even get the desktop app, lists for products and services. If there's a recurring transaction, we'll see that when we get to payroll, checks, import data. So there's a lot of different things that can be done to update it the way that you want. So we'll close out of that. Next, we move to our chart of accounts. As mentioned, the chart of account, it's essentially a listing of all accounts available. Each account is assigned a type and a detail type. So in accounting, the types of accounts, we know we have assets, which is essentially anything of value that is going to provide the company with a future benefit. So cash, we can use it in the future to buy something. Accounts receivable is an asset we are expecting. Hopefully the customer pays you, right? You're expecting to get that cash in the future. Equipment, you're going to use it to generate revenue, right? We have liabilities. This is essentially when you owe a vendor. Like we just saw the bill for PG&E, we owe them $86. Let's just assume that it is a utility company. We owe them. Then we have owner's equity or shareholders equity. That ultimately depends on the tax structure of the business, whether you call it shareholders equity or owner's equity. But at the end of the day, the principle is the same. We have revenue and then we have expenses, right? And if we expand it out, then there's a bit more nuance. But those are essentially the account types. So the sample company's chart of accounts has been modified from the default chart of accounts, and it's tailored to the company's needs. Not all companies need these particular accounts, and some are going to need additional accounts. So as mentioned, I gave you guys the 2Bro example. They do not give pizza on account. Therefore, they will not have an accounts receivable account, strictly cash. So for the sample company chart of account, it wants us to go back to the gear icon. So we click on that, we click on chart of accounts. And then we see here, it basically just lists all of the available accounts. We have the checking, savings, accounts receivable, inventory, etc. So we scroll down the chart of accounts and we see it lists the account type. So that way it's easier for you to know. Then it also lets you know which financial statement it's going to appear on. So when you see BAL, that represents the balance sheet, which shows the permanent accounts, our assets, our liabilities, and owner's equity. And then when we scroll down, we see P&L, which is also our income statement or our profit and loss. And that is where we see our revenue and expense accounts, our temporary accounts. And at the end of the accounting cycle, mostly, for the most part, it's on a yearly basis, or if it's quarterly, monthly, however the company does it, but at the very least, a yearly basis, the net income or net loss, that amount is then transferred to the retained earnings or the shareholders' equity, depending on the structure, all right, or owner's equity. So that's just a quick overview of the chart of accounts. So here it says, as we scroll down, we'll see that there's a balance in the accounts payable for $1,602.67. So here we see it. And it's asking us to click view register. And then it basically shows us, why we owe this money. So the ending balance in the register matches the 1602.67. So remember, again, the dates are a little different. Just ignore it. But we go back to the chart of accounts. And then we scroll down to the chart of accounts to see that each revenue and expense account has a run report item. So it's asking us to click run report on the landscaping services. We scroll down. We click run report. And then we'll just click all dates. Oh, this one's 90 days. Sorry about that. Reading is fundamental. All right, so since 90 days ago. All right, so we update that. And then it just shows us, the different amount, of income for landscaping services pretty much. All right. So really cool things that you can do in QuickBooks Online. So we'll exit without saving. Again, even if I decided to save it, it's not going to change anything. So next we move on to lists. Lists in QuickBooks Online provide us with an easy and quick way to view a collection of common items. So some of the common lists include chart of accounts, products and services terms. And we can decide to view a summary of all the lists available in QuickBooks Online and explore the list of terms. So we go back to our gear icon, we click all lists, and then it just shows us the different lists that are available. Chart of accounts, recurring transactions is mentioned. We'll see recurring transactions when we move on to payroll, products and services, categories, payments methods, etc. So it's asking us to click on terms. And this is essentially, when you provide services to customers on account, you can decide, hey, you got to pay me right now. That's due on receipt. Net 10, if you pay me within 10 days, you get a receipt. Pay me within 15 days, you get, oh, not a receipt, sorry, a discount. You pay me within 10 days, you get a discount. 15, 30, 60, you get a discount. And that kind of helps to incentivize, it helps with cash flow, because let's say, someone provided services for 500 and they're like, hey, if you pay me within 30 days, you only got to pay 450 or 460. Well, depending on a company, they'll want to save that $50 or $40, so they're going to pay it, right? And that helps to incentivize customers, and that helps to maintain cash flow for businesses. So those are the terms pretty much. And again, you could do that for all lists. I don't think there's any recurring transaction. We'll see if there's products and services, right? So we have design, concrete, pump, all of these different things are ultimately here. So that's just giving you a quick overview of the lists. Next, we move on to reports. So QuickBooks Online comes with a lot of pre-designed reports for use in business, but you can decide to customize them based on how you want it to look. So for instance, you can focus on the common financial statement reports, our income statement, but in QuickBooks Online, it's referred to as the P&L, the profit and loss report, the balance sheet, as well as the statement of cash flows. So we're going to click reports from the navigation bar. Remember, this is the navigation bar and this is the gear icon. So we click reports, we go to standard reports, and then it wants us to click favorites to hide any QuickBooks reports that's tagged as a favorite. All right, so here we have the favorites. Right, so we scroll down, we'll see the business overview options. So we have an audit log. This basically lets you know who logged in, when they logged in, how long they were logged in, what did they do. So that's one of the benefits of QuickBooks Online, because you ever, like that song that they used to sing, who stole the cookie from the cookie jar? We don't know, right? People lie. But one of the benefits of QuickBooks Online is that with this audit log, you cannot lie. If you were logged into the program, we are going to see. One of the challenges, though, is that if someone, let's say, they share their login information, it's going to appear as though Rebecca was logged in when it was really Sally. So that's also something to keep in mind for companies that have more than one employee or a contractor that's accessing it. You want to make sure that everyone has separate logins, so that way it accurately reports things. We have balance sheet, comparison, the details. So there's a bunch of reports. So here it wants us to click on profit and loss. So we click on profit and loss, right? And we scroll down on the page. So we see the different things that's happening here. Again, there's some differences in the dates. And then it's just showing us, ultimately this was their bottom line. All right, and again, profit and loss just shows the income minus the expenses pretty much. So then we go back to our reports, click on the balance sheet. And again, our balance sheet is going to list our assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. So again, there's differences with the date. So obviously the amounts might look a little different, but here we see our assets, we see our liabilities, then we see our equity. So we go back to the standard reports, and now we look at our statement of cash flows. All right, and we know what our statement of cash flows, they're broken out into those three segments, or three activities rather. We have our operating activities. These are a part of our normal course of operations. We have our investing activities, where we are investing in property, plant, and equipment. And then we have our financing activities, which basically denotes how the company finances their activities. So they financing it by borrowing money, they issue bonds, and by owners' investments, common stock. So those essentially would be reported in our financing section. So alternatively, you can easily find a report if you know the name and you can just type it in. So let's say we type in accounts receivable, right? So we can get the accounts receivable aging summary in the aging detail, right? So to find a report, related to accounts receivable, we do the following. So we can click the report accounts receivable. And then again, I already started inputting it. And then we see that there are two reports that we can essentially pull up, the aging summary or aging detail. So there's 5 tabs in the settings section of QuickBooks Online. So this is going back to our gear icon. Then we click on accounts and settings. And then as mentioned, we have company, we have usage, we have sales expenses, time in advance. So obviously, there's a bit of a nuance, but same thing nonetheless. So we can edit these by clicking on the pencil icon. Here it's actually showing us edit. So the settings for the sample company, they've been modified from the default, obviously, but when you start working on your own company, you can essentially, look at these things like the usage, how many users, the chart of accounts. There's a limit of 250 accounts that can be listed. Sales, right? Let's say you want to have shipping included? Do you want to have custom transaction numbers, service dates, a discount, deposit? Do you want to show the product service number on the form, right? Do you want to track? So all of these things can be tailored depending on the company. Same thing with expenses. Do you want to show items table on the expenses and purchases form? Do you want to use purchase order? All of these things essentially can be tailored based on the company. For some companies, the first day of the week is not Monday, it's Sunday, right? So all of these things can ultimately be tailored. There's even advanced. So for those of you that like QuickBooks, decide to get into the profession and you use it, you have the benefit, again, of going through this text, ultimately giving you practical understanding of how to navigate QuickBooks Online. So we already went to the accounts and settings. We looked at time. So again, this is just giving you an understanding of what you would essentially see in the account settings. All right, so this brings us to the end of chapter 1. In this chapter, we've used the Intuit sample company to practice navigating QuickBooks Online. We've looked at customers, we've looked at vendors. We've also, we looked at the employee information on the screen, but that's what it would look like. We viewed various transactions and we viewed the chart of accounts, lists, reports, and company settings. As we move on to the next chapter, you're going to accept the invitation to work on an assignment. Chapter 3, you're going to be introduced to wild water sports to learn how to modify the settings, the chart of accounts, the beginning balances, products and services. And then in chapters 4 through 10, you're going to use Wild Water Sports Company to learn how to add operating, investing, and financing activities. You're going to learn how to reconcile a bank account, create a budget, add adjusting entries, and prepare financial statements and reports.